is not. This is not going to be a forms review class.
Oh,
Okay, bye, Jen. We've had plenty of forms training. We will continue to have plenty of forms training done by people much more specific to the form than I will be. What we want to start talking about is the sales strategy. What are the actual strategies for my business that I'm going to be able to start considering to use going forward? I think my biggest overlaying idea with all of this is transparency, transparency, transparency between realtors, between clients. There will be some agents who you will run into as a listing agent who will say, I'm not sharing any information of whether they will or will not. Submit your best offer, have at it. This is the world in which we're going to have to play in. I would hope that for Keller Williams and for our office agents, as we approach the public and as we approach other buyers agents, we have to have, hey, old car, right? Obedience, loyalty, due diligence, right? That's what we're fine to. But we also have some professional, ethical responsibilities to our co-brokers, to the other realtors at large. So I hope that we don't become preventative to getting good business done, and we become more encouraging of good business to go. Now, with that being said, the material that I came up with for this class, this is not Connor's ideas. That to be very clear. This isn't my thoughts on what we should or shouldn't do. This is a compilation of everything that I've been able to sink my teeth in and get my hands on the internet, on the MegaCam, through the different resource pages, through the different associations. And I've tried to compile this into a class that we can talk about over an hour. I'm putting the month that we're doing this here because when we do this again in September, it might be different. There might be different things that we have to live with. So also understand that with all of this, it's moving target policy. We know that there will be changes and ebbs and flows to this. And so while this works today, continue to learn, continue to be. So just a little bit of kind of what we're going to cover, just a basic what happened, where do I learn, some general ideas. We'll go through some conversations with buyers, conversations with sellers, conversations with the lender, talk about what a menu of services can start to look like, and also just a touch of role play at the end. I promise I'm not going to put anything in the spot.
Are you going to be sending this out to us?
We are going to record this whole thing, and I will send the entire slide deck out to everybody. So you can take notes if you want. You don't have to. I'll send you everything that we have. But yeah, I am not going to be safeguarding any. We're going to be safeguarding. But from me to y'all, we will make sure everything that we put pen to paper on, everything is just in your inbox immediately. There is no gap to that. And it's not, oh, if you weren't here, no. Everybody gets involved. So let's just do a quick, rough recount of what happened. Years ago, group in the Midwest got together, class action laws. Agents were showing up with a listing agreement already filled out, 3%, 3%. That's the basic crux of what happened. No, there's some nuance to that. There's always some discussion around it, but that's basically what started to come out. And they got together and they said, this is price fixing. Obviously, got the DOJ involved. Obviously, we got Burnett Sitzer. And now we settled. A lot of companies settled. There are some that didn't. Some that chose to fight it a different way. But the new policies are what they are, right? We had the MLS change when they did. August 17th, this past Saturday, when these went into effect. So we are now fully in. We have to do it this way going forward now, right? So we know that that's where that kind of came from. The one thing that I'm really harking to my clients is that this is everything. This is not just a Delaware thing. This is not just a Keller Williams thing. It's not just a my business thing. Basically, every single real estate agent and real estate professional across the U.S. now has to abide by these rules. Every state's handling it a little differently. I know we love that. But if it were just us, I'd feel a little weary about it because I said now there's a different competitive advantage from company to company. It doesn't exist. And again, this is about what we talk to our clients about. This is all real estate agents, all 50 states. It's the new way of doing real estate. There are tiny, minor, asterisk level exemptions here and there for non-realtor associates with certain companies that didn't go to the settlement, that didn't go onto it. I would not want to be them if DOJ is really looking to, they even repealed and got it back where they could refine us again if they really needed to. So that's one of the big things. And I put newish. Adam Boxman has been doing buyer agency forever. There have been a lot of states that have already been requiring fire agency and to pre-negotiate these for a really long time, right? We just happen to be in an area where that hasn't been an absolute mandatory requirement. And so now we are saying, hey, my business is changing. But the other problem is when we sit down for a listing presentation or a buyer presentation, we're not changing 100% of it. You know, there's some agents who want to come in and sit down for an hour, just talk about this with a client. Tell me it's absolutely the wrong way to go about this. This is a line item in a 30-point presentation that we will have to discuss, and it does have to spill over effect. But if you make this out to be this entire thing that has to be done, what are your clients going to feel, right? Going forward, where do I learn? Now, again, this is moving target as well. This should be 1A, B, C, and D. Your forms say it exactly. The forms you have, NAR, or DAR, FAR, what is on that form is the way that the legal teams have written it to be read by the consumers. What we're really going to work for in this is it's the buyer's choice, it's the seller's choice. We are presenting the information, we are presenting it to them, making our encouragements based on our sales professionalism of what we encourage them to do, and we think will be the best marketability for their homes at sale and their best way of engaging as a buyer. But it's really important as we go through this that we are not telling them what to do. This needs to be buyer and seller choices and allowing them to review the forms. And, you know, in Delaware, I know we work with attorneys a lot. Make sure you have a good relationship with them. You know, Maryland, Jersey, PA, it's not mandatory, but in those states as well, I would encourage, have a good relationship with a real estate attorney. If you start getting into a position and it starts to become a lot, it's never a bad idea to have that partner be inside of your business to be able to help with some of these legally demanding conversations. Again, what's my goal for the next 12 months? Zero agent fines. Right? Like they are not giving you. There's people who've already been fined. Literally, fines have already been levied. There's no forgiveness here. It is do it wrong, you're fined. Period. Okay. You're either practicing with your clients or you're practicing with each other. Next week, we don't have any classes specifically scheduled, but I think I'm going to open up an hour where we can literally just come together and just do some script practice and role play. Just kind of talk a little bit and just have a little bit of a habit out. Let's talk about it. Hey, I don't like the way that's being said because I feel like it's starting to give this. Let's talk about that, right? We encourage practicing with a partner, having that. This was that page we went over during the team meeting, the thrive.kw.com, the agent resources page. Again, we sent this out as a mass email yesterday. We will include it in the Monday email. I'm telling you again, are you starting to get the theme of why we're saying it so many times? This is a fantastic page that everybody should be doing a little bit of work on over the next week or so to really hear conversations from Cody Gibson's voice, from Jen Davis's voice, right? From some Robert Lucido Jr. You know, I want you to hear it from them too, right? Obviously, the NAR facts and our local board are just going to be a good backstop if you need to just quickly find a one-off FAQ. There are a lot of these FAQs that have been answered. Most of the questions you have in sort of these odd scenarios, I actually think a lot of them have started to get brought up already. So I think this is a good place to go where they're housing it, they've vetted it, and they've given the answer that they believe is truly correct. And so what we're going to, again, I'm not the broker. I am not the salesperson of all sales. Right? This is just about us making sure that you have very quick access, because I know sometimes you get a call, I need you to come over tomorrow for a listing. This happens, right? And you don't have a week to then prepare and think about what you can say. You may need quick answers. This is going to be some of the best places, right? Just talk about some general ideas for a second. And this was, again, these were taken strictly from those conversations I saw on the thrive.kw page, what they said. Consumers don't like being told what to choose, right? Consumers want to have the option of choosing what they want. We don't tell them what houses to buy. We present them with an option of houses to buy, and we make our encouragements, but it's their decision. No difference as we start to go into some of these pricing models and our agency models and listing models. Right? Whoever breaks the news controls the conversation. Don't wait. Monica Reynolds, Sarah Reynolds, forget the name. They do 1,800 units a year, 1,700 units a year in Twin Cities. They are going, she says, we go on offense. In this type of a mantra, we go on offense. We don't allow our clients to start picking up everything they're hearing to us. We really set the tone. If you haven't had a nice touch to your database in a while, this is a great touch. Hey, I'm reading, I'm learning about these changes. I want to offer a phone call to anybody in my database that wants to sit and chat with me for 15, 20 minutes about how this may affect you. how this may affect you selling your home in a couple years, selling your home now, you got a son or a daughter selling. I want to make sure that we are breaking the news. Again, I always talk to everybody, we are the news reporters of real estate to our database, right? They come to us because we're in it every day. They want to hear the high level highlights. So do that. Provide your news story for that. Be able to provide something to your database. Consumers don't have as many questions about this as realtors do. That's for sure, right? There are some people who are bringing it up. There are a lot of agents who are like, have you heard about this? No, not really. I've heard a little bit of the news, but, right? But we are sitting here having class after class talking about it every single day. So the mind share game that this is held in our head is huge versus consumer and small. Now, are we right? Are they right? There's probably a middle ground. But again, whoever breaks the news controls the conversation, and how you break the news control. Oh, this is just another line item that we have to add. No big deal. We do have to negotiate the commission up front. You could say it simply, or you could spend an hour on it. Which one is going to be better for you keeping the client going forward? Right? Here's what I'll do. Here's what I'll charge, and here's how we will work it out. This was said by Kimber, and I thought it was just a really simple way when you're sitting down, right? We've had to do this with listings forever. Here's what I'm going to do for you. Here's what I charge you to do that. And here's how we get that worked out, right? It's the same thing as we begin to flip to the buyer conversation. All right, so that's enough kind of preface. I want to start really getting into some of the meat here, right? Let's talk about the conversation with buyers. Before we see a home, you do have to sign a buyer agency agreement and MLS disclosure form. I hope that we do know that, right? So that has to happen for our buyers prior to it. Now, this has been a fairly common, what I've heard across many different agents, of the way they're presenting it to the buyer. This becomes the presentation to the buyer in the conversation. Hey buyer, I want to let you know, based on the new changes, we are going to have to sign a buyer agency agreement. Very similar to the way that listing agents and sellers have operated for a long time. It's just now required here. What I want you to know, buyer, is that I want you to be aware that my transparency and that the clarity of how I get paid and what services I'm going to provide for you are no longer up in the air. We are going to make sure that they're known upfront today, okay? And that's going to be basing on our entire working relationship together going forward. And buyer, there are three main ways that this can work out, okay? One, which is probably going to be the most likely, because we'll talk about it on the seller flip side, that the seller will still likely pay my fee, right? The sellers have been doing this forever. Most sellers are going to continue to still want to do this option. Okay? Option two, the seller may only be allowing for a smaller concession or compensation amount that's going to be less than my total fee. In that instance, we'll make sure that you understand with the lender, total closing costs, how much you would need in order to pay that fee. And buyer, I want you to understand that there is a possibility that we are going to be, in part of our search, approaching listings, and the seller has refused to pay any buyer broker compensation or offer any buyer concessions at all. That is going to be possible, right? Now, buyer, before we go and maybe even see these homes, one, I'm going to be doing my value for you, and I'm going to be negotiating with you. I'm going to be calling a listing agent. I'm going to be finding out this information as much as I can. I'll be doing the work. I'll be doing the research to find this out. And maybe before we even see this home, and definitely before we were to ever put an offer in on this home, you'll know exactly how much of it be, where it's going to land, how that's going to affect your affordability on this home prior to ever putting pen to paper on a contract. Okay? So we have to make sure, again, buyers, they want options for this. They want to understand that there are scenarios that can happen. Your job to give them the bookends of what are the possibilities. Right, but it's also, don't just say like, oh, this will never happen. Don't worry about that. No. We have to be honest about that. We have to be very honest about that. Now, the way that I'm presenting it to, I had a buyer consultation just to continue with some, overhang buyers that I'm happily going to be referring in the future. But I really have to talk to them and say, I want you to understand. Now, this may be a little doom and gloom with it, but I said, I want you to understand that there may be a house that's inside of your budget from a price perspective, but because the seller is no longer willing to offer any sort of a concession, you may actually not be able to afford that house. Now, we'll talk with the lender. Maybe if you're doing a 10% down payment and the seller's not offering a concession, maybe we simply back you off to a 5% down payment and your still total cash to close stays the same. Yes, it will increase. And all you're basically doing is rolling the fee into the life of the loan instead of having to pay it up front. There are options we'll be able to work out with you in order to do that. Okay? Buyers are already paying fees and have already been paying your fee. It's just more transparent and negotiated ahead of time, right? We kind of already know, yeah, if we're going to offer them $360 and you're getting $10,000 and $10,000 back, yeah, the net of that house for the seller is, 350, minus other closing costs, of course, but 340, right? These fees have already been included inside of these prices. It's just now how it's kind of getting worked out on the net sheet, how it's kind of flowing through the transaction. So you got to talk to them. Not really much is changing from the financials, but the way that it gets attributed is. Any quick questions here on the buyer? These initial buy, again, this is not overly comprehensive, but we're trying to keep it simple. How we're relaying this, how we're displaying this, how we're presenting this to our buyers. So any just quick questions here before I move on to some of the seller stuff? Okay. And feel free to just jump in at any time if anybody wants. Let's flip this to sellers, and I do have kind of two sheets on the sellers here real quick. So this is when we sit down during the listing presentation, it is important that as part of our overall presentation, we should be informing our clients about what happened. No, you don't have to go to a history lesson. No, you don't have to raise, 10 red flags and start screaming from that whole time. No, but we should explain to them, hey, seller, I do want you to understand the new landscape of real estate that we're in. I just want to explain briefly, and I do have some consumer guides for sellers and buyers. If you'd like to read and do a little bit more information, I'd be happy to present you that information so you can read it, you can digest it, you can feel comfortable with it. It happens the same on this side too. Hey, seller, let me ask you, and I'm going to use the fishing metaphor for this one, right? This was given to me by one of the Walker guys. So, hey, seller, let me ask you a question. When you go fishing, right, you're all eager, you got all your stuff, you're ready to go out, and you're going to go to the pond, you're on your boat, you got your fishing rod in your hand, you're deciding what type of line and bait do I want to use. Well, I can offer you this. If you don't want to offer any buyer fee, right, because that might be something they say, oh, I heard I don't have to do it. And we'll get to some of this objections. Oh, I heard I don't have to do it. No, I totally understand that. That would effectively be like not putting a hook or a bait on your line and just throwing it in the water and really hoping that a boat occasionally, or a fish occasionally jumped into your boat. We can try that. I don't think it's going to be the best strategy for catching the best fish, buyer getting the best net, but that is a choice you have. Now, option two, seller, you may decide you only want to pay a portion of it. And I don't want to say specific percentages or specific amounts, but you guys get what I'm saying, a portion of what we would consider a normal fee. Okay? Now, that would be like taking just a hook on it, no bait, and just kind of tossing that in the water. Again, you may get lucky and kind of doing rips and pulls, and you might get another one going in that way, but it's going to be tricky and they're going to be battered or bruised by the time they get to you. Okay? I said, wouldn't it be nice if you wanted to actually go fishing properly, to put a proper hook on there, proper piece of bait, or where you're at, and throw it in to get the most of the amount of fish that you want to come and jump, and then you have your choice of the best fish. That would be paying for the entire agent fee. Right? So yeah, that's one metaphor. Right? Metaphor is just a way to cross this. You use the language that you feel most comfortable in presenting this. And we're going to get to a little bit of kind of the objection handling with the seller about some of that and how we can kind of represent that a little bit. But these options, they're just the flipped reverse, right? The way we're presenting to a buyer, the way we're presenting to a seller, it's similar because how many of us have sellers that are also buyers? Should we really be explaining this two completely different ways on opposite sides of a similar transaction? No, I mean, we want to create a cohesive narrative that our buyer and seller clients can gravitate towards. Make it easy. It's the ABC, right? Hey, buyer, here's our 1, 2, 3, our ABC of how this is going to go. Great. I can go with ABC. I understand this. I feel comfortable with this. Right? From the seller, the highest marketability of the home will still be to offer a buyer agent compensation directed as a seller concession. Right? The best way for you to get the most amount of buyers in the shortest amount of time to get the best amount of eyes on your property in order to get you the highest net. That's the other part of this too. Sellers don't care about expenses. They care about the net that they're going to walk away with after everything shakes out, all expenses, all fees, all transfer tax, everything, right? They care about the net. Your ability to be able to go over a seller net sheet and be able to explain the different options. Hey, seller, just a scenario. If we were to have 5 to 6 buyers who all came together in that first weekend, we did a great job, our marketing really worked, and they all came out and I had all 5 or 6 of these buyers who were all wanting your home, don't you think we're going to get a pretty good offer out of that 5 to 6, correct? Yes. Okay. Well, let's say if we don't offer what we need to, and now 4 of those 5 or 6 can't, and we only have maybe 1 offer, or maybe only 1 or 2 offers. Do you think that the offer we're going to get out of just those 1 or 2 is going to be as good as what we had when we had the 5 to 6? Most likely, no, because there was more competition, there was more buyer fervor, there was more of an emotional decision on the buyer to offer what they want for this home and to include the best price and the best terms, right? Price and terms, what they're offering. So what I want, seller, is I want that 5 to 6 scenario so that you have the lion's pick. You have whatever pick you want of the best fish, of the best offer from the most amount of buyers, so that you can decide inside of those what is going to give you the best terms and the best net for your home. That's what I care about, the profit you're going to walk away from this transaction. As your listing agent, my encouragement is to offer whatever you want, your choice, it's negotiable between you and the seller, but we want to offer something that's attractive enough to get that scenario A. This is a little bit different, but you'll see why. The best option for a seller is a buyer with a buyer's agent. Almost all buyers have second thoughts right after signing a contract. And here's why. When the road gets tough, let's say, for example, you're the seller, no concession is going to be offered, period. Okay. And as we start to market the home, we have it listed, and now we have a buyer that is unrepresented because they don't have to pay a buyer's agent. They want to be unrepresented to buy our home because now they're just paying their traditional down payment and the traditional flip. Okay, great. Hey, as a seller, you've instructed me I don't want to do a transaction broker and I don't want to do dual agency. Okay, so we are now, and there are some states that are doing an unrepresented buyer form that has to be acknowledged for a scenario like this. Let me ask you guys, you guys all answer this. Have you ever had a buyer, when you got the home inspection report back, say, oh my God, I don't think I can buy this house anymore. And you're like, I know it's a long report. Let's work through this together. Most of this stuff is monitor, maintain, that doesn't have to be done today. A lot of this is improve or upgrade summaries. And then we have the material defects. And buyer, we're going to be able to negotiate with these sellers to get these defects handled. And if you're really not comfortable with it and there is a large material gap, we do have rights inside the contract in order to potentially negotiate or potentially come out. Right? You've had that conversation, right? A million times with buyers. We've had these hard inspection reports. Now we have an unrepresented buyer. The minute something's going to get tough, what are they going to start to do? They're going to squeal, they're going to squirm, they're not going to want to move forward, it's going to be really tricky. Now you lose a buyer, and now what happens? Well, on the MLS in our history, we have an under contract, right, back to pending, 47 days on market, and now what's every single other buyer and buyer agent saying? What's wrong? What's wrong with the listing? What's going on? What did you find in the inspection report? Was there an accidental WDI uploaded that wasn't supposed to be there for a listing, right? The buyer, and again, that buyer is going to come to the listing agent. The listing agent is going to present it, here's all the things, here's this. Buyer doesn't believe that listing agent because they work as a fiduciary, right? They're a fiduciary to the seller, right? That it's their job to get the most money out of this buyer and the best terms out of the buyer. And they're going to say what they have to, truthfully, in order to get this home sold for the seller. So seller, you want a buyer that has a buyer's agent and a representative to help them when things get tough. You want them to be there to help them guide through the transaction. Right, you're saying this to your client. From my experience, as I work with buyers have a lot of questions. And if they don't have somebody they can talk to that's in the flow of the transaction, there's a lot of deals that would die on the table right there. First inspection, first appraisal issue, first financing issue, first title issue, anything, right? Buyer agent helps to keep buyers in the transaction. And then again, it's about the net, not the commission. A seller net sheet is incredibly important. Highlighting the net with the most buyers looking at their homes will be key to encouraging sellers to offer a concession. We want to have the net known. So if you haven't done a net sheet in a while, practice it, practice it, practice it, okay? Any questions on the seller here real quick before we jump to the lender conversation? They're part of our team, right? Lenders, we talk to them all the time, our partners. Okay, generally we share information with our partner. Now, who in the past has shared a buyer agency agreement with their lender? A couple of us. I'm going to encourage everyone to do it now. Because what does a lender have to do? I need to know what your assets are, what your credit is, what your income is. I need to know your debt to income ratio. I need to know your reserves amount when we go to actually get under contract, right? I need to know these financials in order to properly underwrite you and properly approve you. If the lender doesn't understand that this buyer signed a X% buyer agency agreement and they're starting to do their tabulations and calculations, then they get to an offer scenario. The lender doesn't know how to encourage that buyer. Say, hey, based on your finances, this is about the amount of concessions for you to keep that budget you want, for you to keep your total path to close under a certain amount. You should probably, on a home this big for what you have, you should probably be asking for a concession somewhere in the range of this and make sure that you're hitting those numbers. The lender needs to be able to have that conversation with the buyer just as you do. And so for us, lenders need to have the full financial overview of the buyer's estimated closing cost, period. They need to know what are the fees of the transaction, how much money has to leave this buyer's pocket from now until they close on his home. Getting on the same page with your lender is important. If your lender doesn't know anything about what's going on right now and they're waiting for you, resources pages. Hey lender, this is the playbook that I'm going to be running, or send them whatever information you want or how you're going to want to dictate this out to your buyers. Get your lender on board so that when your lender has the conversation with them and you have the conversation with them, the buyer doesn't feel like there's some mismatch. Well, my lender was telling me that it actually works. So that's playing defense, right? Go on offense. Go on offense with your lender. Go on offense with your client. Make sure that they're running the same playbook and understand your intentions about how you're going to be structuring deals. In times of trouble, clarity is power. We know that. Make sure your lender understands the three options. Make sure your lender can run those closing cost estimates prior to offer and prior to showing. I forced my lender to do this. I had another lender that wasn't doing this for me. He wasn't running them. Well, when you start to get a contract, I'll start to run these things together. I said, unfortunately, not good enough for me. I'm spending 2 hours, I'm driving all over Kingdom Come, and I'm seeing these homes that are near the top of my buyer's budget. I need you to run these scenarios and have a number scenario for my client before these showings. And so I found a new lender that was willing to do that. Turns out it's really just a little automated front-end system that I can plug the numbers in now that I have access to run for clients. But that's important that we can have these things, right? Work with the lender to understand the concession for loan types. We know, right, conventional 3%, FHA 6%, VA. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the overall concessions amounts that are required for these loans are not necessarily just all one concession. They are allowing a split in some of these loan programs and some of these lenders. What's your lender's policy, right? I think it's important sometime over the next week to 10 days, you're sitting down with your lender with a couple scenarios and saying, okay, if I have somebody that's on a VA or an FHA or a conventional loan, and we're going to be asking for max concessions this way or that way, or what does this compensation look like? I need them to tell you, hey, based on our programs here at the bank or based on our programs here at the brokerage, here's what we would be able to do. Here's how we're looking at it. Here's how our appraisers, right, are beginning to start to look at this information and how they're going to be chalking it up. Get together, get on the same page with this. You do not want to leave this to chance, right? Every single client is an opportunity for repeat business and for referrals. You screw up one of these big major ones with finances, I will guarantee you that referral and that repeat business will stop right then and there. Be on the offense with this. Something that has gotten brought up a lot that is not new, but was done niche here and there. It's called a menu of services. Has anybody else come across a menu of services, either on the listing side or the buyer side? There was a study. This is the car wash study, really. The auto industry got together and they thought that buyers, consumers would just regularly always select the cheapest option if presented with options on average. They found it to be the opposite. When you laid out a tiered options approach for pricing, the majority either actually chose the middle or the top end option. We're fearful when we start talking about a flexible commission policy. This is actually a mofer that Ken Pozak down in Oregon does. This is what his marketing leads with. Hey, we offer a flexible commission policy for our sellers and for our buyers. And hey, yeah, you're going to get some lead magnets that are coming through, I just want the cheapest one. And then when you really present it to them, it's like, no, we have our base service, which is this amount. They even have menu of service commissions that are going over 3% in some markets, right? Because of what they're offering. Now, on the buyer side of things, you want me to literally just open doors for you? Okay, I can do that. You want me to just open doors for you, just schedule the showings, and just help you negotiate the initial contract? I can do that. Or do you want a full service realtor who will be able to walk you from A all the way through to Z and be able to hand you the keys at settlement and be able to provide post-settlement services as well? Well, I have 3 different options of pricing for that. Which option would you want? I'm not coming in here and putting exactly what I think you should do because that's your business. The way you begin to take this information, think about what you offer to your buyers and sellers and be able to craft your own menu of services. What did we have on the very first slide here? They don't like being told what to choose, and they want to make sure that they have options, right? So I want you to have these options available. Now, you may say, my one option is my menu of service. That is the option that I present. Negotiating, you can say no, right? In negotiation, hey, are you willing to lower your commission? No, that is a negotiation. You are totally willing to do that, right? Now, again, your buyer may not go with you, seller may not go with you, but that's what you run, right? Here's what I do, here's what I charge, and here's how we'll work it out, right? It's how you're going to present this. When you're sitting down for that buyer consultation, are you doing, hey, let's talk immediately about price? Well, you could. I think what Cody Gibson said was, well, said, hey, I want you to just generally understand as we get started here, because everybody's taking a meeting. They're like, all right, what's the catch? What's the price? How much is it going to run me? Right? Anytime we've been pitched a service for leads, right? That's probably our first conversation. And what does the lead company want to do? Well, let me tell you about all the things that we offer you first. And then we can talk about what that pricing is. And why are they doing that? That's not just random. That's not them just bait and switching. No, it's because they want you to really internalize, feel what all that value is and all the different steps that you take for them and all the things that you're going to take off their plate by doing. And then when I present you with the price, it sort of makes sense and actually balances out a little bit. Right? So that's the same thing that I would hope that we're doing inside of these presentations is, hey, here's the value that I'm going to present to you. Here's all the things I'm going to do on your behalf. And here's how much I charge depending on which tier of that service you'd like. Okay. Marketing and flexible commission policy. Does everybody know what a MOFR is? Who knows what MOFR is? Say down. What you're doing is inside a MOFR is something that as your business, you should decide what are the 3 to 5 MOFRs that my business offers. Is it a flexible commission policy? Is it a really great introduction to a 2-1 buy down rep? Is it an introduction to the lender who could do a buy now, sell later program? Is it somebody who could do a cash offer in your house slightly under market price that you get within 24 hours, close in 2 weeks like homeowners? What is the MOFR that you offer in your business? And lead with your lead generation and with your marketing with those MOFRs. We have an opportunity here to package the way that we are going to present to our clients as those MOFRs for our business in order to stand out, right? Talk about the ideal avatar of me and Bill went over this. Talk about the ideal avatar of client you want to serve and consistently write language and consistently make offers around their biggest pain points and their biggest problems, right? Our commission has always been negotiable. We can play offense in our market to ensure sellers and buyers know their choices. What are the base services you provide? Base, standard, premium. You can call them whatever you want, but you really want to start figuring out, okay, service is not what we offer. That is table stakes. Every realtor in here offers service. We all do that. What is it about your process? What is it about your business that you can identify and point back to? Say, this is why I stand out, and this is why I'm worth the commission that I'm charging. This is why I believe I'm worth the compensation that I'm asking for as we negotiate it here at the table, right? We have work to do. You have some work and some self-reflection to figure out what does that actually start to look like. Okay? Now, we don't actually have to role play this out. I mean, you want to. But these are some of the biggest objections that we started to hear about, what are the most common ones that you're going to start to get out as you sit down with buyers, right? So let's just take a look at this practice the buyer conversation real quick. Objection. I don't know if I can pay you, right? I think that's a common one. So obviously we can present the 3 options. Hey, most likely scenario is A, we'll get the seller to compensate the whole thing. B, they'll pay a large portion of it. Now there is that option that yes, we may approach a house that you can't. And that's out of our affordability chart anyway, right? So that becomes a conversation with the buyer here. But the biggest question that we want to begin to answer here, I don't know if I can pay you, and say, well, let's put the pricing aside for a second. And let's just imagine a world where pricing isn't an issue. Am I the right agent for you? Do you believe that I'm going to be able to do what we're talking about here in order to understand your needs through a good needs analysis, in order to make sure that I'm searching and finding the correct homes for you, in order to negotiate the correct offer and the best terms for you as your buyer, to be able to shepherd you through title, through attorney, through lending, through appraisal, through inspection, through pre-close? Do you believe that I can do that? You do. Okay, so it's not a question of whether you don't think I'm worth it. It's a matter of you having some back end remorse of how it might be able to shake out because you're looking at your bank account. Again, I want to revisit the value of what I provide to you, and I want to revisit the options that we have in order for you not to have to pay that. It's just about bringing it back to not pay. It's about what they're willing to pay for versus what they're willing to get for that payment. You have to make it very obvious about what are they receiving for the payment that you're going to charge for your business. What are you worth? And how articulately can you explain that to a buyer in a way where they're not asking, I don't know if I can pay you, but it's how can I pay you? How can I make sure you get paid the most that you can? right? Obviously, that's a little bit of a hard conversation to get that, but that's the idea that we want to sort of bring in. The objection from the seller side of things. I heard I don't have to pay the buyer's agent. John. Yeah, so I keep up with industry news, so it looks like I don't have to pay any buyer's agents anymore. I said, hey, you know what? That's a fantastic thought that you have there. I'm really appreciative that you went and did that research. I think what's going to be really illuminating when we sit down together, and I know you're an open-minded guy, is if we actually explain to you why it's in your best interest to definitely pay a buyer's agent. So let's have that conversation with the belly to belly, right? Again, it's how we're going to begin to present this. And we come back to the sides that we did on the seller when we start talking about this thing. You sure you don't want to pay a buyer's agent when the road gets tough and that buyer's willing to walk away at a moment's notice? You sure that by presenting the most amount of buyers that we can have through your home in the shortest amount of time to drive up the price and bidding more and get an emotional response out of the buyer isn't going to net you the actual highest profit that you want in this transaction, right? It's how you are able to then turn that back and make sure that in the eyes of them winning, it's about keeping the deal together and it's about them ending with the highest net. And still believe that by offering out to a buyer's agent, you're going to be able to achieve that result with that. We kind of talked a little bit about marketing, what is the more, but this is where we kind of, this and one more slide, but how do we begin to position your brand? It is more important than ever that you're able to identify yourself in the market. Would you rather yell in a stadium or speak in a normal voice in a small room? When you offer that you are a real estate agent that helps people buy, sell, rent, or invest in real estate, you can scream at the top of your lungs in that Eagle Stadium, and 5 seats away, they are not going to hear you. You're just going to get lucky to land on someone who broken clock right twice a day, who's close enough to you in proximity to hear that message and actually has read that. Right? So we have to start thinking about, okay, if I have to be really specific about the offer that I'm offering my clients, and I want to really think about who is that ideal client for the car that I have, and I'm going to write language consistently around the problems that they have, and I'm going to consistently bring that out to them. How am I positioning myself that now as I offer my commission policies, I can justify the price that I'm paying because, hey, avatar of my ideal client, I've identified you. You also already responded and we've had conversations around your largest problems. I've already proven to you that I know how to handle those problems and handle those solutions, right? I'm now in a position where I'm going to be charging for these services that I provided you already and how I'll continue to execute on these promises going forward, right? So that's so much of what we need to consider for our own personal brand. There's 2 things that are getting predicted. And there's not a lot of stats behind this, but this is just as you start to talk to agents and Gary and some of the big guys, Steve Murray, who's like one of the best indie conversion guys out there. He said, we are probably going to see the single largest period of time where independent brokerages fold into larger companies since real estate brokerage models have been out. Keller Williams is a huge legal team that has been working on this tirelessly. There are plenty of 25 and under indie brokerages, maybe 50 and under indie brokerages that do not have the resources or capabilities in order to keep their agents and keep themselves out of fines and structures. There will probably be a massive consolidation inside of the real estate space over the next couple of years. There's actually 3 predictions. Number 2, we are going to see teams begin to explode in size. Single agents who aren't able to demonstrate value, especially, and unfortunately, a lot of new agents into the business, they're going to have a really hard time articulating what that value is. Don't ever forget, there will be some agents out there who are willing to work for bottom basement bargain pricing. Do we agree with that? No, I don't think anybody should undercut their value just because they want to get a transaction. But how many realtors, out of all the realtors, almost 60% of them, 50% of them didn't do more than 1 deal in the last 12 months? How many agents are sitting there behind on rent, behind on their mortgage, having to make a decision between their kids' tuition or paying rent, right? Because they don't have the funds. There will be agents who say, I'll take whatever I can get just to get a closing done. That will be there. I don't want that for the agents in this market center. The way we combat that is being very hyper competent and articulate around the value and the steps of the transaction that we present to our client, the value that we present. Anybody who has past clients, double down on your reviews, double down on your proof of concept, double down on the experience you've already provided to people. That is going to be your best friend as you begin to articulate this. I'd like to show you my 47 5-star Google reviews from happy clients over the past 3 years who have said nothing but kind things and nice things about me as a realtor. They did a study with marketing on Facebook ads. They did a study about 10,000 ads. And they realized there was about 50 or so ads that were actually converting at a really high consistent level. Of those 50 ads, 40 of them, so 80% were what are called proof ads. What did this product actually do? Show me the proof after you actually took it, you used it, you bought it, and whatever. What actually happened a month later, a year later, whatever. We all have that same content inside of our businesses, and it's our past client reviews. That should be a heavy leading focus, especially as you go into your buyer, your listing presentations, and your marketing. Last little bit here. Listen to top agents regularly. That thrive.kw.com/agent resources page. That's 21 videos from top agents, top lenders, top rainmakers of how they're presenting this team, buyers, sellers. That's a good first place to go. Our legacy panel that we're going to hopefully have, or we're going to have coming up in September on the 11th. That's a good place. Asking the questions inside the Facebook group, asking those questions as you can. It's incredibly important that we listen to agents who have experience and have gone through shifts before and how they demonstrate values and bring it into our own. Script practice, you either practice on your clients or you practice with a colleague. I regularly script practice twice a week for what I have to do for the calls that I have to make, right? I've been in business nine going on 10 years here. Still script practice. I still work on these things. Because just because it worked last year doesn't mean that it works this year. Every conversation in real estate becomes new. And if you're going to go on offense and you're going to take advantage of a crisis and grow through a shift, you have to practice what you're going to say a lot more than you practice on your clients. Obviously, talk to Vicky, talk to the broker. They are there, right? This is not a forgiveness thing. This is a permission first for any new activity. If you have and are developing a menu of services or you're having and developing a way that you're going to structure your listing or how you want to market, please, I encourage the creativity and let's run it by the broker. Next 12 months, your funds. That make you the happiest. And obviously, we have our local boards. Some are more responsive than others. Some are more helpful than others. But by and large, they are also there as the governing bodies for our local areas to make sure that our real population is doing well and that we're not struggling and that we're not getting bogged down by fines and we're not getting bogged down by issues. You must read it and internalize it. This comes back to the do the work component of this. The end of August, kids are going back to school. Golly, so are you. Back to school, make it a time-blocked activity every single week that you're sitting down, taking a look over the resources that have been presented to you, taking notes in whichever fashion you want to, practice with your dog, practice in a mirror, I don't care, but you have to figure out when are you going to absorb this information, how are you going to allow the new information to rub against the old information in your brain, how are you going to identify the things that you can keep the same, and identify the things that need to change. Once you identify the things that need to change, how are you going to begin to practice those? How are you going to be able to articulate those both in writing, in your marketing, in your lead gen, in your buyer-seller presentations, and just to the general public in general, right? So that's it for us for this class and for everything. I wanted to kind of wrap this up here right at about 45 minutes. So again, we recorded this. I'm going to share the recording out with everybody. I'm going to share the slides out with everybody. Everybody will get everything, right? That's not going to be a big deal. But we are going to continue to talk about this as a market center every week, every month. We're going to do end of the quarter. We're going to talk about stuff. Because again, like JP and Tori said, this is moving target policy stuff. Not all of this is the way it's going to be forever. So we are going to continue as much as we can to find out any changes that happen, anything that's tweaked based on the original things. But my biggest takeaway, as I can impress upon this, is whenever you get into a legal trouble with anything in real estate, what is one of the first questions anybody you go to for help asks you? What does the contract say? Your forms are your best friend right now. The new forms are the best friend. Your ability to present the forms, don't interpret them, don't practice law here, but you need to be able to give good advice and say, hey, The way I've seen this interact in a really aggressive way, in a way that's been really damaging, we've had scenarios similar to this that have happened. In ways that it's gone really well, here are situations that have happened here. It's up to you, seller or buyer, how you'd like to engage with this section of the form, with this section of the compensation, with this section of the concession, with this section of the whatever. But I want to give you the bookend to the ideas of where you can self-select into this conversation. Do not make decisions for your buyers and sellers. Present them options. Allow the sellers and buyers to have that choice. That was the entire part of this settlement from the beginning. The consumer didn't feel like they had a choice in the matter. It's now our obligation legally and ethically to present these options and allow sellers and buyers to self-select. Got it? Any questions? Yes.